There's this one thing that is most likely your biggest obstacle to actually becoming fluent, and it's not what you think it is. Hey guys, it's Meredith with phoneticfluency.com. Welcome to another episode of the Fluency Habit Podcast, and today I want to talk about the one thing that you have to get over if you're feeling stuck in your language learning journey, and that is your fear of being cringe. Society has changed dramatically in the last 10, 15, 20 years, and a huge part of that is because of social media, because nowadays we're all chronically online. I think that results in us feeling more visible to not just the people we know, but everyone in the wider world. And so we all do a lot more curating of the kind of image that we present of ourselves online. I saw a reel about this the other day that was pretty funny, so let's watch it.
The caption says, 20-year-olds on social media today, and we see a cute girl, aesthetic outfit, preparing a matcha, super aesthetic. And then, meanwhile, my Facebook in 2006.
The reason this reel is so funny, I think, is because it hits on something that's actually very true. I don't want to say anything negative about the first girl, but there's obviously a difference between what we see in the first part of the video and the second part. And in the first part, what we see is someone who's very carefully planned every part of the image that she's portraying. You know, she's planned her outfit and the setup and the lighting and all these things, and it's just so curated. While in the second half, obviously, it's completely spontaneous and no one's trying in any way to look a certain way in the images that were taken. And maybe I really like this one because it's kind of nostalgic, because I remember that era. I remember when we all had digital cameras and some people had MySpace and maybe other people didn't because the internet still felt kind of new. Maybe nostalgia plays a part of it, but to me, the second half of the video just feels more genuine and more authentic. So because we're all chronically online and we all have some version of an online image to curate, to maintain, or a version of ourselves that we want to present to the world, we all feel a lot more visible. And so I think we all care a lot more than we used to about what people think of us. When I was in middle school, I remember the worst thing that someone could say about you behind your back is like, she's so conceited, or she's so full of herself. Which, by the way, if you're learning English, conceited and full of themselves are both synonyms that mean like someone who they just like themselves a lot and are very into themselves and their own image. That was the worst thing that someone could call you, but nowadays that wouldn't even be an insult because everyone is conceited. Everyone is full of themselves. Everyone cares a lot about their image. Because we all care a lot more about what others think about us, I think that for many people, the worst thing they could imagine is being perceived as cringe. So they spend a lot of time and energy avoiding doing anything that could possibly be embarrassing. And that's a shame because embarrassment isn't something you should avoid, especially when it comes to language learning. I'm here to tell you, it is impossible to learn a language, let alone become fluent in one, without having moments where you feel awkward or uncomfortable or embarrassed. It simply will not happen. And when people try to avoid feeling embarrassed, they're not willing to go through that part of language learning, which is completely unavoidable, and so therefore they fail at learning the language. In fact, if you think about people who have studied a language for many, many years, especially in academic settings, maybe you've met someone like this who has studied a language for a long time and is very good at it theoretically. They can pass exams and tests. But if you put them in a situation where they need to use the language with native speakers, they can't. And I really think that's because they've avoided using it, they've avoided speaking because they're afraid of feeling embarrassed. My theory is that there's a massive number of people out there who otherwise would be well suited to learning a language. They are motivated enough, they're smart enough, and they have the time to do so, but they fail solely because they just can't accept the embarrassment that comes along with it. I had a situation like this in real life where a friend's wife theoretically wanted to learn Spanish because he's a Spanish speaker, she's an English speaker. But I say theoretically because it was a situation where she was like, I want to learn Spanish, and there was always some reason why she couldn't yet, and she hadn't taken any actions towards starting to learn. At that time, I had already learned Spanish as a native English speaker, so I was giving her some advice, like the things that I used when I was first getting started. But then she said something to me that I will never forget, and that was, I don't really feel comfortable with the idea of talking to someone one-on-one in Spanish right now. I feel like once I know the basics, then I'll feel comfortable with it and I can start working with a teacher or a language exchange partner. And this was so illuminating for me because it helped me to understand why she was saying she wanted to learn Spanish but wasn't actually taking any action on it. And it was because she was afraid of speaking, which is completely valid. It's very scary when you start learning a new language. But the problem was that she thought that more knowledge would cure her fear, and then she would feel comfortable speaking. And in fact, it's entirely the other way around. There's no amount of knowledge that you can obtain that's going to make doing something that's scary to you feel less scary. And this applies to language learning and everything in life. Rather than waiting until you have more knowledge in order to start speaking another language, you just have to start speaking. It's the only way to get over the fear. There's this phrase that's really popular recently. You've probably heard it. Do it scared. And I think it's popular because it's true. If you wait for something to come in and take your fear away so that you can do the thing that you're scared of without feeling scared, it's never going to happen. You have to just do it anyway, scared. You have to just rip off the Band-Aid, which is a really common expression in English that means whatever that thing is that you have to do and you're avoiding it because you know it's going to hurt, instead of continuing to avoid it or slowly peeling off the Band-Aid and making the pain last even longer, you just have to rip it off. Take all the pain in one moment so that you just get it over with. The same is true with anything you're scared of, and in the case of language learning, with speaking the language. You just have to rip off the Band-Aid so that you can show your brain that it's actually not that bad. I think that when we are scared of something, it's because your brain wants to protect you. So your brain thinks about this new thing that you've never done before and is like, okay, what are the risks? What's the worst case scenario? What's the most dangerous outcome that could happen? For example, in the case of speaking another language, what is the worst thing that could happen? I could look like a fool. I could say something so dumb and it's gonna be so embarrassing and I'm gonna look like an idiot. And that really could happen. So your brain thinks of that and is like, oh, well, I don't want that. And so it protects you by making you scared of speaking. But we just have to rip off the Band-Aid and do it anyways. And when you do it, you'll see that whatever the thing is that you're most scared of, maybe it does happen, and maybe it's not that bad. So for example, if I speak a language, almost certainly I will make a fool of myself. I'm learning something that I'm not used to, and so I probably will say something dumb. In fact, I'd say it's inevitable. If you're learning a language, you're going to say something silly. You're going to say something dumb. You're going to make mistakes that are kind of embarrassing, and you're going to feel embarrassed. But that isn't a good enough reason to not do it. On the other side of that embarrassment is the goal that you're after. Embarrassment is just the price that you pay to reach your goal. If you think of it like that, then you'll start to think every moment of embarrassment that I have is just another step closer to me achieving my goals. If your goal is to speak another language fluently, every conversation you have, every time you face the fear of speaking and face it head on and just embrace the embarrassment, each time you do that, you're getting closer to your goal of fluency. And this is true not just for language learning, but everything in life. If you want to be good at something, embarrassment is the price you pay to become good at something. So if you're not avoiding embarrassment, then you need to get as much exposure to it as possible so that you improve these skills that we're talking about. At the intermediate level of language learning, I think the most important things are numbers. So you need a very high number of hours of input and a very high number of hours of output. Input is something I've talked about in my other videos, comprehensible input. So listening to as much English or whatever language as possible. And that's pretty easy to do. You just listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos, movies, TV shows, audiobooks. So you're just getting a lot of input of that language. Output is the part where you're the one doing the speaking. And at this stage, I think the best way to get a high number of hours of speaking practice is with a conversation partner. The reason I say a conversation partner instead of your teacher is because your teacher is an important tool in your toolkit, like I've talked about in other videos, but they're more for this very precise learning, like making sure your grammar is good, getting exposed to new vocabulary, phrases, different things like that. And we have to remember this is a numbers game at this point, so it's not really realistic to pay your teacher for several hours of conversation practice throughout the week. And the purpose of this conversation practice isn't necessarily to have someone correcting you the whole time, but just for you to increase the number of hours that you spend speaking the language and getting over the fear of speaking the language. And so that's why the best tool for you at this point is a conversation partner. How do you find language exchange partners? When I started learning Spanish 6 years ago, I was lucky because italki had this free language partner finder function, so I was able to find several people that I could practice with, but they got rid of that a long time ago. Since then, there are a couple other apps I've tried, like Tandem and Hello Talk. That was a long time ago, and what I do remember is you had to like match with people almost like a dating app, and then you had to kind of like chat with them and arrange a time to meet up. And in my experience, I remember sometimes they wouldn't even show up, so it's kind of a little bit of a waste of time. Before I made this video, when I was doing the planning, I wanted to have an option that I could recommend to you guys, so I found a new option called Episoden. It's a free website/app, and I made an account in order to try it out. Basically, the way it works is you make an account and you can chat with people instantly. So you don't have to do any of this like chatting and trying to arrange a time that works best for you. And then that also means you don't have to worry about people not showing up at the scheduled time. They also vet people, like they filter people to make sure that, you're on the app for the right reasons. So as soon as you make your account, you just, type in your basic information, and then right away it puts you into a live room with an employee of Episoden, and they just ask you like a couple quick questions. It takes like 1 or 2 minutes, and you can think of it as like a mini tutorial, and they tell you, okay, this is how the app works. Do you have any questions for us? Boom, and then you're done. Right after that, you can immediately start connecting with people, and it's sort of like a roulette thing. So you just say, okay, I'm ready to chat with someone, and instantly it's going to connect you with someone else who's also online and wants to practice their English. I think this part is really cool because when I first heard about it and when I first tried it for myself, it instantly made me think of Omegle. I don't know if you guys remember that, but again, going back to that time in life when the internet was still kind of new, Omegle was so interesting because I think it reflects how at that time we just didn't have this anxiety and fear of being cringe, because that was kind of a really weird thing to do, but I mean, I did it. So many people just did it because I don't think we were that worried or scared about embarrassing ourselves. So we would just chat with strangers. And basically, to me, when I tried Episoden, it felt like a wholesome version of Omegle because the people are vetted, like they've, the staff has met them. So there's not any kind of creeps on there like what you'll get on Omegle. And everyone's there for the same reason, which is to improve their English. And so you match with these people instantly, and you have 7 minutes to have a conversation. And I think this is really good because all of these things that I've been talking about feeling anxious and scared of cringe and scared of embarrassing yourself, whatever happens in this 7-minute conversation, you know that in just a couple minutes more, it's going to be over. And if you don't want to, you never have to talk to this person again in your life. So the thing I was talking about ripping off the Band-Aid, just whatever the thing is you're scared of, in this case, speaking a language, just going for it and ripping off the Band-Aid over and over and over, this is what it's going to help you do. So if you use Episoden and have these 7-minute conversations over and over and over, that feeling of rigidity and hesitation about speaking English, when you expose yourself to that feeling over and over and show your brain and show your body that it's okay, your level of comfort is going to get so much better. You're just going to start feeling like there's nothing to be scared about when it comes to me speaking English. The people that you match with are also other learners. So I joined even though I'm a native speaker because I wanted to try it so that I knew I was recommending something that I actually recommend. But the people you match with are going to be from all over the world. For example, when I was messing around with it, I matched with someone from United Arab Emirates, several people from Latin America. I matched with someone from South Korea, and I think someone from Morocco. So you'll meet people from all over the world, which is really interesting as well. Like I said, the purpose at this point is not necessarily to have someone who's taking this kind of teacher role and is going to be correcting your English, but it's more the exposure of getting used to the feeling of speaking English as much, as often as possible, and for as many hours as possible, because at this point, it's just a numbers game. If you only take away one thing from today's episode, it should be that embarrassment is the price of entry. If you want to be really good at something that you've never done before, no matter what it is, you have to let go of whatever fear you have of being cringe or of feeling embarrassed. And the best way to get over it is whatever you're scared of doing, just do it still scared. No amount of knowledge or preparation ahead of time is going to take away the real fear that you feel when it comes to speaking a language, because it is scary. Sometimes I wonder if people think that because they see me confidently speaking Spanish out loud, if they think I'm not scared. But when I was a brand new student of Spanish, I had my hands under my computer desk, wringing my fingers like that because I was so anxious for the same reasons. I was scared of embarrassing myself. I don't want to brag, but I'm a pretty smart person. And if you're a smart person, It is so embarrassing to not sound like a smart person when you're starting off in a new language and you don't sound as smart as you actually are. But there's no way around it. There's no way you can avoid this stage of language learning. So the best way to deal with it is just facing it head on and doing it even if you're scared, even if you're embarrassed, and even if you're cringe. That's why it's so important that you practice conversation as much as possible, because you want to rip the Band-Aid off as soon as possible. Normally I would recommend whatever worked for me in the past, but the way that I found my language exchange partners years ago no longer exists, which is why before making this video, I researched and found Episoden as an option. I do think it overcomes even some of the barriers of traditional language exchange partners, which is I really like this kind of instantaneous aspect of it, and the fact that the conversations are very short. So it's not this like commitment where you need to have a full hour of time if you want to practice. If you just have a couple minutes, you can open the app or open your laptop and connect immediately, and you'll instantly get connected with someone. And so this allows a very low stakes way to practice as much as possible so that you can get those hours of practice time high. So make sure to sign up for Episoden. I do have like a link for you to sign up using. This is not a paid situation. Episoden is a free app, so they're not paying me the same way that, like, for example, Anki doesn't pay me. But because it's new, I think they're trying to increase their usership, and I saw that the creators who send people to Episoden, they invite some of them to this like language conference in South Korea, and I would really like to go because I have never been to any kind of language related conference at all. And even if you don't make content, maybe you can understand sometimes this is kind of a bit of a lonely world when you're just like me and filming alone in your living room. So I'd be really happy for the opportunity to go meet people in the language learning world. So if you do sign up for Episoden, which I suggest you should, make sure to use my link. I do want you to know though, this isn't paid, and I would never ever recommend something that I don't believe in, because I do get paid collaboration proposals a lot. And I deny like 99% of them because I think the apps and websites aren't actually good. Sign up for Episoden using my link. And remember, you're never going to be able to avoid embarrassment or cringe while learning a language. So just embrace it. And remember, every time you feel embarrassed, this is another step closer to your goal. Embarrassment is the price you pay to become amazing at something. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.